The sinecure is particularly common in countries ruled by coalition governments and a cabinet with decision-making authority wherein a minister, without portfolio, while he or she may not head any particular office or ministry, does have the right to cast a vote in cabinet decisions. In some countries where the executive branch is not composed of a coalition of parties, and more often, in countries with purely presidential systems of government, such as the United States, the position of minister without portfolio is uncommon. Australia. Stanley Bruce, former Prime Minister. Bangladesh. Bangladesh appoints ministers without portfolio during cabinet reshuffles or fresh appointments. Ministers are not usually appointed without portfolio as a coalition negotiation. All long-run ministers end up with a portfolio. Bulgaria. Božidar Dimitrov. Canada. While minister without portfolio is seen by some as a mere sinecure appointment, it has been a role that numerous political notables have played over time, including former Prime Minister John Cration, who filled the role in a Pearson cabinet in the 1960s. John Turner also kept a seat warm in a Pearson cabinet. Notable conservatives who filled the role include R.B. Bennett and Arthur Meighen. However, Meighen served this role after he had been Prime Minister. The title of minister without portfolio has been used off and on in recent times, though the title has fallen out of favor, and the last minister without portfolio, Gilles Lamontagne, was promoted to Postmaster General in 1978. The practice has continued under the guise of ministers of state without responsibilities in the ministers' titles. The position has also been filled on the federal or provincial level by experienced politicians near the end of their careers as a way of allowing them to counsel the government and take on projects without the burdens associated with administering a government department. Denmark. 3. Control ministers served as ministers without portfolio during World War I. After the liberation of Denmark in May 1945, the first Danish cabinet included 4 ministers without portfolio. Among these were Danish ambassador to the U.S., Henrik Kaufmann, who had conducted his own foreign policy throughout the war and refused to follow orders from Copenhagen as long as Denmark remained occupied by a foreign power. Kaufmann served in this capacity from the 12th of May to the 7th of November 1945. The 3 other holders of this title had joined the cabinet a few days before: Axel Larsen, K.R. Juul Christensen and Frode Jacobsen. Lise Ostergaard held a position as minister without portfolio with special attention to foreign policy issues in Anker Jorgensen's cabinet from 26 February 1977 to the 28th of February 1980. Anders Fogh Rasmussen appointed Bertel Haarder to minister without portfolio, but effectively Minister for European Affairs. Haarder served in this capacity from the 27th of November 2001 to the 18th of February 2005. The reason for appointing a minister without a ministry was the Danish European Union presidency of 2002. Haarder was considered the most experienced Danish politician on European affairs. Germany. Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, Arthur Seyss-Inquart, Hjalmar Schacht. Since 1949, a federal minister for special affairs is a member of the federal government that does not have charge of a federal ministry, although some have simultaneously been chief of the federal chancellor's office. Hungary. Tamás Feligi. India. K. Natwar Singh. Ireland. The Ministers and Secretaries Act 1939 allows a member of the Government of Ireland not to have charge of a Department of State. Such a person is referred to as a minister without portfolio. Such a minister may nevertheless be given a specific title. The only substantive minister without portfolio has been Frank Aiken, the Minister for the Coordination of Defensive Measures during World War II. By the Emergency Powers Act 1939 then in force, the Minister for Defense was able to delegate some competences to him. Such delegation is now done instead with ministers of state. Junior ministers, who are not members of the government. Junior ministers can be given a right to sit at cabinet. They are often known colloquially as super juniors. This allows the government to circumvent the constitutional limit on the number of senior ministers. On several occasions, a minister has been appointed to an incoming government with the title of a new Department of State. Between the date of appointment and the date of creation of the department, such a minister was technically a minister without portfolio. Examples include Israel. It is common practice in Israel to appoint ministers without portfolio as part of the coalition negotiations. All cabinets in recent years have had at least some such appointment. The governance law passed in 2013 forbade ministers without portfolio, effectively ending the practice. However, in spite of some objections, after the 2015 elections this issue was revisited in the Knesset and it was allowed for the practice to resume. The full alphabetical list of ministers without portfolio since 1949 is Italy. In the Italian government, ministers without portfolio are nominated by the President of the Council of Ministers and formally appointed by the President of the Republic to lead particular departments directly under the presidency of the Council of Ministers. Unlike the Office of State Under Secretary to the Presidency, who fulfills duties in the Prime Minister's remit, ministers without portfolio enjoy the full status of ministers but do not lead an independent ministry. Departments on equalities, European affairs and relations with regions, for example, are usually led by ministers without portfolio. The Monti cabinet had 6 ministers without portfolio: Dino Piero Giarda, Fabrizio Barca, Piero Nudi, Enzo Moavero Milanese, Andrea Riccardi, Filippo Petroni Griffa. The Letta cabinet had 8 ministers without portfolio: Josefa Idem, Cecile Chienga, Giampiero D'Elia, Dario Franceschini, Enzo Moavero Milanese, Graziano Del Rio, Carlo Trillia, Gaetano Quagliariello. The Renzi cabinet has 3 ministers without portfolio: Maria Elena Boschi, Mariana Madia, Maria Carmela Lanzetta, Republic of Macedonia. As of 2012, ministers without portfolio are Hadzi Neziri, Nedzet Mustafa, Vela Samic, Bill Pavlovsky, Nepal, Dr. Ramcharan Mahat, Netherlands. A minister without portfolio in the Netherlands is a minister that does not head a specific ministry, but assumes the same power and responsibilities as a minister that does. The minister is responsible for a specific part of another minister's policy field. In that sense, a minister without portfolio is comparable to a staatssecretaris in Dutch politics, who also falls under another ministry and is responsible for a specific part of that minister's policy field. However, one distinct difference is the fact that a minister without portfolio is a member of the Council of Ministers and can vote in it, whereas a state secretary is not. The Minister for Development Cooperation has always been a minister without portfolio. In the second Balkenende cabinet there were 3 ministers without portfolio: Agnes van Arden, Rita Verdonk and Alexander Pechtold. In the fourth Balkenende cabinet there were 3 ministers without portfolio: Eberhard van der Laan, Bert Koenders and André Roux, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Youth and Family. The second Rutte cabinet has 2 ministers without portfolio: Stef Blok and Liliane Ploomen, New Zealand. In the first Labour government from 1935, the Hon. Mark Fagan was a minister without portfolio from 1935 to 1939, as was the Hon. David Wilson from 1939 to 1949. They were appointed to the upper house and made a minister without portfolio to add them to the cabinet, although neither were elected to a seat in Parliament. In the third national government, Keith Holyoake was made a Minister of State 1975–77 after he had retired as party leader, and in the fourth national government Robin Gray was made a Minister of State 1993–96 after he had retired as Speaker. Both appointments were considered sinecures to avoid their return as backbenchers. Norway. From 2009 to 2013, Karl Erik Skjøtt Pedersen was a minister without portfolio and chief of staff in the Prime Minister's office, where his job was to coordinate within government. Philippines. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines, then Senate President Manuel Roxas was appointed minister without portfolio by the Japanese government. Portugal. Following the Carnation Revolution, several politicians were made ministers without portfolio. Álvaro Cunhal, Ernesto Melo Antunes, Francisco Pereira de Moura, Francisco Sá Carneiro, Joaquim Magalhães Mota, Jorge Campinos, Mario Soares, Vitor Alves. Serbia. From 2007 to 2008, Dragan Thilis was a minister without portfolio, in charge of the National Investment Plan. Republic of China. In the Executive Yuan of the Republic of China there are several such ministers, at one time. Currently, the ministers without portfolio are Ling Junk Tzer, also serving as the governor of Taiwan Province; Joyce Feng; Jacqueline Tsai, also serving as the Minister of Mongolian and Tibetan Affairs Commission; Hsu Chun Yat; Woody De, also serving as the Governor of Fujian Province and Minister of National Development Council; Ye Xin Cheng; Yan Hongsen; Xiao Chia-kai; Sweden; Dag Hammarskjöld; Tanzania. President Jakaya Kikwete appointed Professor Mark Mwandosia as a minister without portfolio in 2012. United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, it is often a cabinet position, and is sometimes used to get people such as the chairman of the Conservative Party or the Labour Party chairman into cabinet meetings. The sinecure positions of Lord Privy Seal and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, which have few responsibilities and have a higher rank in the order of precedence than minister without portfolio, can also be used for similar effect. 19th century Edwardian and wartime post-war 21st century United States. In the United States, an individual who has great influence on government affairs without holding formal office might be described as a minister without portfolio. Such an appellation is completely unofficial and merely serves to underscore the extent of the individual's already existing influence. It does not grant any new influence or power. Examples include Bernard Baruch and Arthur Burns. As the Vice President of the United States influences policy insofar as the President allows. The role of Vice President is similar to that of a minister without portfolio.